We try to bring you high-quality educational and informational content every single day. Why do you think the price is having such an anemic time? The news story of the hour. Jump onto the chart. Is this the beginning of a massive financial unraveling? We've got to add a little addendum to the show map today. So we start here on the daily. Now, we've been looking at the RSI on Bitcoin's daily chart for the last several days. It always has been, but it's been increasing over the last 50 years since the government has been getting bigger.
What is up, everyone? Good morning and welcome to Coffee and Crypto Live, the greatest crypto show on all of YouTube. I am TA Tim. Thank you so much for joining us today. A lot of you guys have been asking, where is Jebb? And so I'm going to give you guys an update on what's happening with Jebb. There's been a lot of confusion, a lot of frustration even throughout this whole year for Jebb himself. And I know a lot of you guys have been asking a lot of questions. So I was talking with him this morning. He is, the reason he's been out the last couple of days is he is sick. And a lot of you might be even saying to that, like, hey, Jebb's been sick a lot recently. Well, it turns out he's actually going to be seeing a doctor about this because we're pretty sure something has happened to his immune system. He has been sick several times this year. And as frustrating it is to you guys, believe me, Jebb is the most frustrated person throughout all of it. So please be praying for him, be praying for his family. He's got a young family, a wife. Please keep him in your thoughts, but hopefully he will be back sooner rather than later. Hopefully he gets it all figured out. The good news is we don't think at this point it's life-threatening or anything, but it is definitely a nuisance that needs to be sorted out. But I am joined today by two beautiful people. That's the beauty of it. Even when Jebb is out, we've built this channel now to where we have a whole team to continue to bring you guys top-notch education and what's happening in the crypto space. I'm joined by our technical director, Smay the Turtle King, and I got T-Shroom over here to my right.
What's up, everybody?
I'm doing pretty well. Actually, some might say I'm doing better than I deserve. So
some might say that. Some might say that.
Yeah,
nothing else you guys want to add to the
no, I'm good.
Old pot? How you feeling about Boston tonight, Smay?
I'm not feeling. I gotta be honest with you. I think they're gonna win tonight, but I don't know how I feel about the series. Just because I feel like Tatum is still not stepped up. So that is how I feel about it.
Gotcha. T-Shroom, what are your thoughts on the Celtics?
I hope they win. I want them to win because I love basketball.
Oh my gosh, we're gonna have a great show today, guys. This has got a lot of good stuff. I would love to tell you it's all good news. We're gonna talk about in that second segment some stuff to keep your eye on when you're looking at the bottom. Is the bottom in on Bitcoin at around 20,000, or do we have further to go? We're discussing that and a lot more here in just a second. But a quick shout out from one of our sponsors, and again, we want to thank them so much because especially right now in a bear market, in a time where the whole market seems to be down, we would not be able to even be here without their help. And that company is Link2, and it's a really, really cool company. We've talked about it more recently, but in case you've never heard of Link2, this is a golden opportunity that they give you so it allows you to invest in some of these companies that have evaluations over $1 billion, but yet they're still privatized. Before they go public, and it's really easy for all the stock market and all the big whales and everything else to get in, they're giving you an opportunity as a smaller investor to get your hands in the pot. And some of the companies that have gone through things like this have been like Coinbase, and one that's going through right now, things like Ripple. And I know a lot of people are sitting here saying, guys, we're at the bottom of a bear market. Is this the time to be investing? Guess what? That's the exact time to be going in and investing in these companies while they're privatized so that you can maximize your gains. And guess what? Link2 makes that possible. So if you are wondering where, there's a link in the description down below. Go sign up with Link2 today so that you can invest here when there's blood in the streets in these companies before they make it big time. You're not going to regret it. Let's go ahead and move on and do a market pulse this morning. Real quick, before I even jump in, we're going to go to CoinMarketCap. We're going to look at a news story. T-Shroom, what are your feelings right now about everything that happened yesterday with the Fed announcement? And of course, this morning we also heard about the Bank of England giving their announcement as well. Just give me a 10-second thought from your brain on what is happening in the market right now.
Yeah, for sure. Well, the Fed came out with some unanticipated the week before news. They triple hiked. They were, the market was baking in a double hike. Turns out the market can bake things in a lot faster than we thought, at least parts of the market. And so right now, markets are actually, somewhat stable in reaction to that triple Fed hike. So you said 10 seconds. Now we've got the BOE, Bank of England, coming out with definitely a more dovish 25 basis point hike. So things are kind of flattening out, and the Fed hopefully will be in the rearview mirror. Our central bank headlines will hopefully be in the rearview mirror as we journey forth into the landscape of crypto, and crypto will be able to stand on its own, and more of the stories from crypto will actually emerge as the ones that are more important, and we can kind of put the Fed and the BOE behind us.
Yeah. And if you guys are wondering the significance of that, no, I'm going to have a word from Smay here in just a second. I'm going to go through this point and we'll get to you here in a second, Smay. If you guys are wondering the significance of why we're paying so much attention to the Bank of England, remember back here a month ago, this green candle right here, that was the day that we had the Fed announcement. Of course, Jerome Powell came out, said 50 basis point hike. He gave a very dovish answer to questions. Even though we had the 50 basis points, he made it feel like we really had control over our economy. Now, that's not very true. Of course, we saw the inflation rates happen. But guess what? This red candle marked this was the day the Bank of England last month came out. And even though they only raised by 25 basis points, their remarks were super hawkish, super fearful. They were very concerned about the future of their economy. And of course, the crypto market tanked that day and we started our descent down. Now, right now, what we're looking at is yesterday we had our Fed announcement. Today we had our Bank of England. Let's see how this continues to play out. At the moment, today is definitely red. We're sitting back down at 20,800. We'll talk more about that in the technical analysis section coming up here in just a couple of minutes. But as it stands right now, the significance to the story coming out of the Bank of England is that they still stayed with 25 basis points. And their only total right now is at 1.25% up. Now, they have an 11% inflation rate, which is way higher than the United States. So if you're hurting here in the United States with the US dollar, I feel for any of our fans who are over there in England. Your British pound is hitting almost historic lows. I think at one point we dropped to $1.20, like each pound was worth $1. Or say what it would have been. It would have been 120 pounds were worth $1. That is super, super low. However, as T-Shroom did say, it did feel like they came out a little more dovish here. And going up right here, immediately after the BOE's decision crossed the wires, GBP over USD took a turn to the downside, falling as low as 120. That's what I said. But before recovering some ground, it appears that traders are not convinced that the central bank will deliver a hawkish response to soaring price pressures in the economy. So as it stands right now, we might see a little bit of a difference here. Instead of them having super hawkish remarks, they might have some more dovish remarks, in which case Bitcoin might not respond as negatively as it did last month. But before we move on with our market pulse, I know Smay, I'm assuming he's going to say he has some green names, so that is on me for not getting to him sooner.
Yes.
We do need to read those green names. Yes.
I have some green names here. We have JoJo, Colin McDonald, Grand Roofing Incorporated, Cyberfix Online, SEO by Bradley Kellum, our very own Kelly Kellum's father, Groovy Elliott Locke, Tom Wilkes, Adam Rourke, Tristan Williams. Let's see. We got, Matt C. We got all the great usual suspects. We got Shannon Sharp as a new moderator. Just want to shout her out. But that's about it. Back to you, Tim.
Boom. Well, let's go ahead and jump onto CoinMarketCap and let's look at what we have here again. Today is it's been a more reddish day. Cardano's in the green if we're looking at our top 10 coins. So is Solana and so is Dogecoin. So we do have those three holding up, but everything else is not heavily in the red. It's kind of, as we somewhat predicted, the response was that we're kind of moving sideways based off of this information. Let's look at our biggest gainers and losers of the last 24 hours. Elrond is up almost 13 or over 13%, excuse me. Helium is up once again. I believe that was up even yesterday. So I wonder how much of that is it still picking up some momentum that it had yesterday, and it's on its way back down. As you guys look over here, I can tell the last little bit has been down. However, it's still up almost 7%. But you're going to notice those numbers are not very high. Even the top gainers, we start getting very quickly into people only gaining, or projects only gaining about 2% and still being up there. Let's look at our biggest losers of the day. The good news is they're not massive. Monero's only down, is the top loser, only down about 8%. And the others, so we got some 7 from Bitcoin Cash. So not necessarily a bearish day yesterday either. It very much was a sideways movement. And again, we talked about that because just as we talked about with the market as a whole, this price drop kind of was an anticipation that we had baked in, expecting historic inflation is going to lead to 75 basis points. Sure enough, that's exactly what we had. So we do want to keep an eye on, if I move to the hourly chart here, we do want to keep our eye on, are we going to end up breaking through this $20,000 level right here? Are we going to hold it? Are we just in a season of volatility right now? We're going to talk about all that and more. And let's go ahead and jump into that. Let's look at the charts because it is time for technical analysis. I'm going to jump out to the daily chart first. And you guys will notice I have some new lines here today. And I want to start with why I have those lines so that you at home, you guys who are doing your charts, you can stay with us and understand why you should be redrawing this. You guys know that I'm a big proponent. I'm going to do it here again in just a second, but I'm a big proponent of sometimes when we start to break support, when we start to break resistance, when things get a little messy. I've seen charts more often than not have way too much stuff going on, and it can get really confusing. Some people can read it really easily, but sometimes it gets kind of confusing. Sometimes the best thing to do is just go ahead and clear your chart. So let's start with that. The first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and put that strong level of $20,000 up there. It's not going to be perfectly. I'm going to get it kind of close there. Boom. We'll go right there. I think technically it's at $20,036. Good enough for government work. But what are the other levels that we should be paying attention to? I'm going to go ahead and hold that we're going to stick with, I think there's significance to this descending level of resistance that we've been talking about for a while. I'm going to change that color to red, though, because I like to keep my resistance red, like to keep my support blue. We got a long way to go before we come back up to this level of resistance. Those of you who are wondering what this line has come from, we've had a couple different levels of support that have been broken. We started over here where we had actually a lot of good momentum going. We were kind of working into a falling wedge it's almost a trading channel, but it's a falling wedge by definition. But of course, when inflation came out, we plummeted through this support level. So for that one, I'm going to go ahead and cancel that. Another line that we had here that I thought was pretty significant, if you go back all the way to our all-time high back in April of 2021, and you come through here, it actually has significant touches here with these two wicks. Also, a lot of wrestling going on during that little short rally we had at the early but late still of 2021. But of course, we dipped even through that level of support. So this is another line that I think temporarily it's time to go ahead and say, hey, we got to get rid of that one. The line that I'm going to draw right now that I think is a key level of support, but again, if we break it, we'll have to kill it again. I think right now the significance is to touch. I'm going to show you where I get the points of these, but if I were to bring up my RSI, you guys are going to see these peaks right here. I believe looking at this point is super important, so I'm going to go ahead and draw this line of support down through where we are currently. This line, I'm going to turn that blue for you guys, signifying that we have support there. This line is important, and I believe the other one, a new resistance line to keep an eye on, is we are sitting very much in a trend right now as far as resistance right there, touching with these 3 points back here on April 5th. We have right here, it's going to be May 4th, and again, before that dip, the 8th and 9th of June. That is a key level of resistance, and this would put us right now into a falling wedge. So why is this significant? Because as it stands right now, let's say this formation holds up right here. It should send us back up to breakthrough, and potentially we could start heading back towards this level of resistance before we see some resistance there from a technical standpoint. Now, as I talked about before, I'll reiterate it for everyone who is watching. If you guys have been watching the last couple of days, you guys know this is important. This volume right here, right now, this paired with the news that broke yesterday from the Fed, I still think holds, from a technical standpoint, a very strong level of support for a short-term move to the upside. I am not, though, saying that we are not going to be able to break through 20,000. We're going to talk about the fundamentals of that $20,000 of support here in just a couple of minutes. But as it stands right now, if all I'm doing is looking at the charts, there is still reason to believe that we can hold up not only this flat level of support, but this descending level as well. That, as you guys can see, even though we're dropping right now, we're at 20,800, kind of flirting with that $800 level. We're still above that level of support as it stands right now. So there's still some reason to have some hope there. If I were to pull up my TD sequential and my Bollinger Bands, again, we're also going to see that there's some help there as well. So we're at the bottom of Bollinger Bands, and what's really cool right now is we're actually capitulating on the Bollinger Bands. For those of you who don't know and don't use Bollinger Bands, this happens a lot. Look at how we open up this volatility, but now the bands are starting to close. This is telling us that on the 4-hourly chart, we should be having a breakout coming very soon. It absolutely could be to the downside. And if it does happen, there's going to be some fundamentals in play that are going to cause it. But right now, those fundamentals are not concrete. What we see on the charts are actually pretty bullish in saying that the bears have kind of wasted all of their strength right now. It's time for the bulls to take a little bit back control. So it would make sense for this breakout on Bollinger Bands to go to the upside. Especially if I go down to the hourly chart, I'm looking at my TD sequential. Guess what we just saw flash in the last hour? We, a couple hours ago, had our green 9 flash, which is the signal for reversal. But then we kept moving to the downside, and we have another candle signaling from the TD sequential on the hourly chart. It's time to reverse and go back to the upside. So these are all things that are actually pushing Bitcoin in the direction of saying, unless something changes, unless something new happens, unless fundamentally a new article or a new story develops to push us to the downside, it's actually time to go back to the upside. And this is confirmed actually by Lux Algo. And you guys know we love us some Lux Algo. It is a phenomenal tool. If you don't have it, you're going to want to get it. There's a link in the description down below. But you're going to see on all of these time frames, we are actually sitting at places where Lux Algo says it is time to go ahead and reverse. And yes, we have a strong sell signal right here. And yes, we have a dread trend catcher right here. We got to keep our eyes on that. But we are sitting right at the take profit on the hourly chart. If I go up to the 4-hourly chart, we have been in the take profit. We're actually pretty deep in it. I'm not saying we have to reverse right now, but look at that. We are still holding our take profit above the $20,000 level. The 4-hourly is saying that it's time potentially for us to go ahead and reverse and start a new trend. I go out to the daily chart because we want to keep maxing and going out and seeing are we seeing anything different on larger time frames. And sure enough, on the daily chart, we are deep into our take profit. This is giving us a sign it might be time to reverse. Now, what I didn't check this morning on the weekly chart, let's see what the weekly chart is saying. Well, we're below our take profit on the weekly chart, which is signaling that we are oversold to the downside. Bitcoin right now is massively oversold. The weekly charts, Lux Algo confirms that, and it's not just Lux Algo. I'll go ahead and take Lux Algo down because I love Lux Algo, but let's look at our RSI. Now, this is actually really significant. I was reading an article this morning. Let me take down the volume too, because I've talked volume already. We don't need to talk about volume anymore for this show unless someone asks that in a question. Let's go and look at the RSI right now. Right now, we're sitting at a 26. Now, if I'm on the daily chart, 26 is not that significant. In fact, on the daily chart, you're going to see several times within the last couple of years, we've dropped below the 30. We're getting down to those levels. But if I'm out looking at the weekly chart on the RSI, look at this. I'm going to go back. Actually, I want to show you guys on the, what is this? This is called the Brave New Coin, which shows you all of Bitcoin's history forever. Let's go back and look at history. There's just not a lot of times in the past that Bitcoin's RSI even gets that low on the weekly chart. If I were to zoom in right here, for example, we dropped all the way down to about 27. If you were to look right here, we dropped about 28. Right now on the weekly chart, and we have a couple of days left before it closes, we are sitting at an all-time low on the RSI, lower than any bear and lower than the bottom of any bear market we've ever seen. Again, I'm not going to say that that means that we're absolutely at the bottom, but what we do know is that on the weekly chart right now in Bitcoin, we are massively oversold. And you're going to see a lot of articles kind of confirming that. A lot of economists and a lot of technical analysts are pointing this out. This is not something to ignore. Again, am I saying this absolutely is the bottom because of that one metric alone? No, I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that you got to keep your eye on what's happening on the RSI. You guys know I love my RSI. Technically on the daily chart, we are still upholding our bullish RSI divergence. Is that going to end up playing out? Are we going to form a new level of bullish RSI divergence? I'm kind of sitting on the fence with this one. I talked to you guys about this a little bit yesterday. Right now, of course, this point back here when we touched the price of about 35,000, that candle body close, we went the lowest we've been throughout this bear market at about, that's roughly 20 on the RSI. Whereas right now we've hit touches of 24 and currently we are sitting at 23, yet the prices are way lower. By definition, we are sitting currently in bullish RSI divergence, which should give us some support to the upside. But my question is going to be, are we going to support and create new bullish RSI divergence before this actually plays out and we see a reversal? I've gone on a lot about all this. I want to throw it just for a second to T-Shroom. T-Shroom, I want to hear just your thoughts about what you're seeing on charts, what you're thinking about price action. As you're looking at that $20,000, you can go ahead and start talking about even your views of the fundamentals. But do you have any anything that you see differently than what I'm showing on the charts?
Yeah, so if you come over to my screen, I've got something pulled up here for you. Essentially, so these are some of the lines that Jebb's been drawing, but kind of what I'm thinking is that institutions right now, they're looking at Bitcoin, they're looking at Ethereum at these low levels, and they're thinking, man, we really want to get in here. We think that Bitcoin's the future. We like Ethereum, but is it going to go lower, right? And so they obviously. Institutions exist on a much longer time scale, right? So they don't mind if it goes lower here. They don't feel the pressure. They have a lot more institutional memory. They understand that cycles happen and things come back up, they go down. So what they're wanting to do is they're wanting to buy as low as they can. So whereas right now, if there was a big bullish story, right? If Walmart and Kroger and Publix just announced that they are accepting Bitcoin, and LeBron James goes over to Walmart and buys a basketball, right? And it's on ABC News primetime, right? Like just the home run for Bitcoin adoption, right? If that were to happen, right, you'd probably see Bitcoin come back you see Bitcoin just kind of spike up and have just like a giant rally. Now, that may have actually been an oversold adoption rally, because that would be fundamentally extremely great for Bitcoin. But the point I'm trying to make is if there was a big story for Bitcoin, it could kind of come back up and come back and touch 30, right? But the overwhelming economic pressures would bring it back down, and that then it could push lower. What I would rather see, and this might be hard for some people to hear, but what I would rather see is for it to push lower now and push down to 18,500, so that it pushes that RSI even lower, right? So that when it doesn't. Whereas if it were to come up here in some kind of a relief rally, then the RSI would come back up, right? And it would come back in here, so that when it came back down, it would have a lot more room to run lower, and then we would go even lower, potentially down into the 15 area. So that's a short-sighted kind of like, how can we avoid going lower? But so what I don't want to happen right now is for institutions to get a false alarm and start buying in, and produce a fraudulent rally, a fraud rally, a smokescreen rally, and then bring that RSI back up to where then there'd be room to run to the downside when the overwhelmingly bearish market pressures kick back in. So that's kind of my take.
Yeah, no, I think even if you go back to my screen real quick, Smay, we talked about this a little bit yesterday. I didn't draw this falling wedge, but I think I want to clarify. This is not necessarily what's going to happen, but this could be very realistic. Again, finding support right here in this falling wedge, coming back up to resistance, and then coming back down even lower, breaking through that 20,000. I think that is possible. 20,000 is definitely still a strong level of support. This is that number that a lot of people have been calling for a long time. And yes, now you're starting to see the 14s, the 15,000s, even people saying 5,000. Those predictions are coming out of the woodwork. I'm going to give a lot more weight to the ones that are saying 20,000, though, who have been saying it for a long time, and they have been proven correct. We got to break through 20,000 before we start looking at that 15 and the rest of them that are even lower. But if the price were to do something similar to this and stay within this falling wedge, that would make a lot of sense. It would be our third touch on support before a break. And at the same time, we could be setting up even further bullish RSI divergence, because if the price acts like this, I guarantee you the RSI is going to start giving some strength and come higher, setting up bearish RSI divergence. What are you talking about, bearish RSI divergence? If I get to right here, guess what? Price is still going down. The RSI is starting to go up. It's time to reverse to the downside. And then we come back down, and in the same time frame, we don't come back down to the 20s. We actually maybe stay somewhere around 30, maybe that higher 20, like 28 or 29. Either way, that would be that bullish RSI divergence. It would also give us that lower price right here. Again, I didn't draw this perfectly. That says 18,000. It could get even maybe down towards 17, 16. Who knows? And stay within this falling wedge before we finally actually see a rally to come back up and test this level of resistance. And then this falling wedge gets killed. We don't talk about that anymore, and it's starting to play with new levels of support and new levels of resistance. Not a guarantee, but just in case people are learning to read and predict with technical analysis, you're going to see charts like that play out very, very often. That does not mean that the bottom is in. That does not mean that the bears are done. What it means is even in a bear market, even when the price trajectory of everything is going down, look at this. Within this little dip right here, we have been dropping now, and I'm going to go off this for a second because I don't want to draw on the screen. We have been dropping ever since November, but look at how many reliefs there are. We drop back down, we had a little relief. We drop back down, we had a little relief. We drop back down, we have relief, drop, relief, drop, relief. Even though we have come down, it has been a constant downward cycle since November of 2021. There are several instances of relief. So when people are saying this is crazy, this is ludicrous, we're going down to 15,000, we almost never do that kind of dips in a straight line. We have relief rallies first, and then a new piece of information will come out. And if I'm looking at the date right, let's say it were to be in this area, look at that right there. That's the same time in July. I'm looking at the 11th of July, 12th of July. That information will come out next month about what inflation is done. We'll see height rates come again from the Fed, and potentially similar to this dip right here where inflation was still not under control and we paid the price for it. Will inflation be under control here? I don't know. There's a good chance it won't be, and that could be the catalyst for why we finally do end up breaking through 20,000. Now, we're going to discuss here in literally about 10 minutes that there are still fundamentals that could play out here shortly that would drive us down. We're going to need to see them play out, though. You don't count your chickens before they've hatched from their eggs, but if we drop below 20,000 before what I'm kind of laying out for you guys here with the falling wedge, it will be because of these stories. with that being said, though, let's go ahead and read some super chats. Let's engage with chat a little bit, and then we'll jump into our second segment.
Let's do it. Here we go. Super chats. We've got a couple. Tim France donated $2. Said, once again, reminding Smay that the Celtics are losing. So eat that, Smay, in your face.
Damn.
From that was $2 worth of energy.
They love you that much. They want to spend $2 to hurt your feelings.
Yeah. And then we got $2 from Kevin Grems. Good enough for government work.
Yes.
Gesturing towards that little bit of humor from
That
Tim.
is an adopted statement from my dad. I know a lot of people say it. My dad said that phrase all the time, so that is just my dad coming out of me. Every time the job was not perfect, but it was okay-ish. That was our phrase. So
that definitely sounds like an age-old phrase. And I'd never heard it before. Actually, is it? I think it might be a kind of a northerner phrase.
You ever driven past?
And it makes sense.
Like government workers on the side of the road digging a hole, and there's one person in the hole digging, but there's three of them on the side. And then it's like you drive past things, and the signs are kind of crooked. You drive. I literally saw this one place where they were painting the lines of the road, and there was a stick, and they went around the stick. They didn't move the stick to paint a straight line. They went around the stick. Yeah. And I'm sure their statement was, "Well, we work for the government. Good enough for government work."
So I'll skip ahead to this. Wasn't a super chat, but Jack Mahofer said, "Didn't this guy join the military last year? What happened? Couldn't hack it?" So it's actually kind of funny. No. So I did join the military, and I did hack it. I got through basic training, and I'm still in the military. I'm just in the National Guard, which is a lot like the reserves. We just work on the weekends. We just go report, and we do a bunch of Army stuff on the weekends, 1 weekend a month. So I didn't give up on the Army. It's a part-time gig. Look into it if you're interested in your state. But I can also speak to the government work part two, because I kind of work for the government in a sense. I definitely work for the government as a member of the U.S. military, and there is a lot of that sentiment of like, it's good enough for government work. So I can definitely attest to that. And then we've also got another one from Jackal 1370, who said, "Focus on what the Fed is doing. That's what's controlling markets." And you couldn't be any more correct there, Jackal.
True.
But we do like to do a lot of TA here. But what the Fed is doing is overwhelmingly the most important economic force right now in the market, and it's sucking the liquidity out of the market. It's pushing all the risk towards risk off right now. So folks are piling up cash on the sidelines, which is good in a sense, because it's bringing the prices down for millennials and younger generations to be able to afford to get into some of these assets, not just crypto, but also some of the other assets in the Bitcoin and the stock market. Also, we've been seeing a lot that real estate may be the next one to come down. So, if you've been looking to buy a house, but you feel like they're too overpriced, now might be your chance here in the next couple year or two. Unfortunately, though, interest rates will be higher than they were. So they get you coming and going. But yeah, that really is the end. There's one more non-super chat, but if we wanted to go ahead and skip on down the road, we can do that as well.
I think we have time for one more question.
Okay.
And,
yeah. Well, okay. So this is another one, kind of in a similar sense of the last one, but I didn't copy the name on accident, but it says the problem with these TA indicators is that they don't account for news, manipulation, market cycles, etc. Fine for scalping, but it's time to be cautious. So I actually disagree. I think that they absolutely they summarize in geometry essentially what the calculations and the measurements of what these fundamental movements do. So when Luna went down, right, we can now calculate that, and that gets baked into the price, and there's a shape to that, and it changes the channel that Bitcoin was in, or it makes a new formation like a pennant or something, to where the situation changes, and the psychology of a technical trader is then altered by these fundamental events. And yes, the fundamental events come first, and you do have to track them on a different dimension. You have to be watching the news and thinking for yourself. Tuning into shows like this that every single day are covering the most important things in crypto and what matters in crypto. But I'm sure Tim also could speak to this, because he is TA Tim.
We've talked about this for a while. I haven't used this analogy in a long time, but people need to understand about technical analysis. It is a lot like if you were to go to Vegas and you're playing blackjack, and they like to discourage people from counting cards. Why is counting cards illegal? Is it a perfect system? No. Even counting cards, you can make mistakes. But what are you doing when you're counting cards? You're reading the probabilities that are going to be coming up before you. And people who count cards are the best blackjack players. In the same boat, technical analysis is almost like reading cards in that it helps you limit and stack your odds of being correct about the next market move. Of course, the fundamentals and the news and what's happening is what's going to drive the market. And guess what? Sometimes when you're playing blackjack, the deck gets reshuffled. That's what happens when a major news story happens. And when I was looking at the chart, you can go to my chart real quick here, Smay. I was talking about this. I actually fully think, and I stand by this, that we were heading up towards this level of resistance back here before the inflation numbers came out. I think those inflation numbers, while people expected them to be up there, 8.6 was the surprise. I don't think a lot of people predicted 8.6. A lot of people actually predicted more like 8.3, maybe even 8.1. But instead, because we hit that historically high number, boom, shuffle. The deck was reshuffled. The fundamentals dropped. It's time to start from scratch and continue to read the technicals. Technicals absolutely follow the fundamentals, but they help you understand the probabilities of what's coming next. So should you be trading and investing, you off my screen now, Smay, should you be trading and investing based solely off of technical analysis? No, you shouldn't. But you also probably shouldn't do it just based off of fundamentals. What's really good is when you understand the fundamentals and you understand the technical analysis. Again, that's like being a card counter in Vegas, and it's absolutely legal. They're not going to kick you out and take your winnings away from you. It's going to allow you to make better winnings. You're not going to win every single hand. You're not going to make every single perfect prediction, but you will make more good ones than you will bad ones, and that's the name of the game when it comes to investing. So again, I respect the opinion, but I disagree that technical analysis is not utilized. It absolutely is utilized. It just sometimes needs to be recalculated and used. So let's go ahead and transition here. I actually, we have another sponsor for today, and it's important we get this one out because this is tomorrow. We have a webinar with Lorenzo, our CPA guy here at Crypto Jebb. You guys are not going to want to miss this. He is going to be talking to all of you guys about all the keys you need. I think he has 8 strategies that he's going to show you guys on how to save money, protect yourself from taxes. In case you didn't know, the government is keeping their eyes on crypto. Anyone who kind of escaped in the past, kind of skirting the rules on taxes when it comes to crypto, it's not going to be as likely. You do not want to be caught in that trap. Make sure you protect yourself and your profits and pay the government as little as possible legally. Protect your taxes. You're going to want to hear that from Lorenzo. And what's really cool is if you get to the end of that, it is $100 to join the webinar. But let's say you're like, hey, this is really complicated. I want Lorenzo to handle my taxes for me because he's a CPA. That $100 will go straight towards your fees for paying him. So if anything, it's almost like a free webinar, and then you get to have a great CPA and understand how valuable he is. There's a link in the description down below. Make sure you go sign up. I think there's a couple of seats left there. You don't want to miss it. That is tomorrow, the 17th. Do you know what time that is, Smay?
I believe it's at 1
p.m. Eastern Standard Time?
I believe so, but
okay,
that's not confirmed. So.
We'll make sure we update you guys on that. I think that information will definitely be in the link in the description down below. But let's go ahead and let's move into our second segment and talk about, everything we've kind of been leading up to, even that kind of transition I had right before we talked about Lorenzo, and that is that, hey, if we're going to break $20,000, fundamentals have to develop. And I want to pause right now before I even jump into this and just kind of stop us where we're at so people fully understand the market at the moment. At the moment, all the fundamentals we know have come into a play. Everything we know about the Fed and how it's responding for the next month. Everything we know about inflation, because we have to wait a whole month before we find out more information about inflation. The market has taken that into account, and it has stayed above 20,000. So at this point, that is why there is still hope, not only from the charts, but fundamentally, that at least for right now, 20,000 is a strong level of support, that we're going to actually have a short relief rally and then come back down, and now we'll start to ask the question, can we hold again, or will we break through this time? We have to wait a little bit before we see those fundamentals. But there are a couple dominoes left on the table that if something catastrophic were to happen and they begin to fall, we don't have to wait for a relief rally and then come back down. We actually fundamentally could go ahead and break that right now. So the big idea of this whole section is that the carnage might not be over. And the key word right there is might. We want to make sure, and I want to stress this to you guys very much so, there is still hope that we could see a rally come. There is still that on the table, but I would be lying to you. I would be misleading you if I didn't let you know that there are potential signs that carnage is not done with the Bitcoin market, and it's going to be okay. We're going to talk about why it's going to be okay, but you need to know that there still might be some carnage coming. And I want to kind of throw it to T-Shroom, because right now, what we are seeing, this domino that we are very, very concerned about is, of course, we saw everything happen with Luna here within the last couple of weeks. But then last week, the next domino to fall was an exchange, Celsius. I mean, that's a whole world. I'm going to let T-Shroom update you and talk to you through all that. But Celsius, a large exchange, shutting down and refusing to let people take their money. That was the second domino to fall. The third one, though, is breaking news from the hedge fund manager, Three Arrows. There are potential issues happening there. They've already had $400 million in crypto liquidated. Their company holds about $10 billion. But what would it take for potential problems for Three Arrows to develop? And then what dominoes would fall if Three Arrows starts to liquidate and go downhill? That's when it could get actually pretty scary in the crypto market, and we could be looking at a number of teens, low teens for a Bitcoin price. T-Shroom, I want to throw it over to you. What is the information happening right now that everyone needs to know about when it comes to these stories with Three Arrows, Celsius, and Luna?
Absolutely, yeah. So if you want to start over on my screen, what I want to first point out is that this is marketwatch.com. So this isn't Cointelegraph, this isn't CoinDesk. This is like CNBC, right? So this is the mainstream financial news, and this is the face of crypto right now. This is one of the biggest headlines in crypto to the perspective of the average investor who's usually in stocks and other things like that. So crypto crash, what contagious risk could Celsius Three Arrows pose? Here's what's to watch. And you know, there's a lot in this article. It kind of breaks a lot of this down. But what I want to do is actually skip down to where I found something really interesting. One of the competitors of Celsius, Arbra, their CEO has weighed in, and this was the quote that was read. Usually when you're, and this is the quote from Bill Barhart, so something like that. Usually when you're holding withdrawals, it's because there's a duration mismatch as a lender. Referring to the potential, Barhart said, referring to the potential causes of Celsius' situation, a duration mismatch between what's the average duration of your loan versus how long it takes to process and with a withdrawal for your customers. And if the two don't match up, you've got to stop withdrawals because you're going to end up with a big problem, right? So they, what Celsius was doing essentially, and you can come back up to me, is they were taking money essentially from their clients, folks who were lending to them, and they were lending. So you know, these parties were getting together and money was being exchanged. Celsius, in their terms of agreement, it was technically legal for them to take some of that money that was on their platform and go stake it for themselves, or stake it, you know, to return to other investors. Whatever they were doing, it got caught up, and essentially they got in a liquidity trap where they couldn't pay out investors, people who were staking on their platform. They couldn't pay them out when they went to withdraw, and so they froze withdrawals. Well, now this competitor, Abra, is kind of weighing in and kind of providing some insight into why that might be happening, and it comes down to a duration mismatch. So, you know, I'm not a skilled financial, I don't know everything about the lending world and everything like this, but this is providing some insight into what the issue is there, and it doesn't look like, unfortunately, it doesn't look like there's any end in sight quite yet. It looks like Celsius has hired a bunch of attorneys to come on board and help them figure this out, but it doesn't look like the light is at the end of the tunnel quite yet. And so if you've been staking in Celsius, you know, or you've been lending to Celsius, you know, you may have a while still. And this has larger ramifications for the market. But before we get into those, Tim, did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean,
on this?
I was going to just even get your opinion on what you think about this, because we talked about this with Luna too. Because, you know, Luna wasn't. I mean, here first of all, is Luna officially dead at this point? I don't think they actually officially are dead. I think they might still be out there technically, although the public opinion is they are dead. You know, Celsius is not officially over yet. There's a whole thing still going on there. But do you, T-Shroom, think that they can recover from this PR nightmare? Will people ever trust them ever again?
And you're asking about Celsius?
Yeah, Celsius.
No, I think unfortunately during this time, Celsius is getting lumped in with Luna. I mean, we've had this meta narrative of a Darwinian event for crypto. That's absolutely what this is. This is the Bear Stearns, Lehman Brothers moment for crypto. It's obviously not as big as 2008 because 2008 encompassed a lot more total total market cap of funds that was in the balance. But you know, this is a similar moment where operators who are over leveraged, right, who are breaking a fundamental rule of investment, which is you do not risk what you cannot afford to lose. Those folks are getting shaken out because the managers who are managing those funds were over leveraged. They were managing irresponsibly. They were trying to get they were getting greedy. They were overcome by greed. And now they're paying the consequences, and their name is being smeared all over media, and not just crypto media, marketwatch.com, right? Front page of media. And unfortunately, they're not the only ones. We're also getting similar headlines from a hedge fund called Three Arrows, and that's our next story. But Tim, did you have any wrapping up thoughts on?
No,
on
I wanted to transition down to Three Arrows because I think the Celsius news again. I'm not going to say old. It's within this last week, but it's starting to transition of like, okay, Celsius is going to play out. We got to wait for more stuff there. The Three Arrows though is new within the last couple of days, and I don't know if a lot of people know about the details of what is happening there and the significance of something. If something were to go south even further with Three Arrows, what that could mean to the market moving down the road.
Yep. So if you come over to my screen, we've got a little bit of a write-up on this. This comes from theblock.co. I believe this is more of a crypto website, but crypto fund Three Arrows Capital faces potential insolvency after lender liquidation. So that's not good. But what it gets into, and you just give me a second to find this, gets into exactly what was going on here. Yeah, so the liquidation event is just one of several setbacks by the firm, which has backed projects like Avalanche, Polkadot, and Ether, which are all down 57, 38, and 47% respectively over the last 30 days, right? So what that tells me is this is an entrenched hedge firm. This is a hedge firm that is diversified, and it is I wouldn't say integral, but it's verging on integral for specific blockchains. Now, Ether is a very big one in there. I don't want to give a false narrative that Ether could go down with Three Arrows. It absolutely could not. But what it means is that this firm, Three Arrows, has been investing in these blockchains, right? And now it's facing insolvency, meaning the investors who invested in Three Arrows, they're going to be calling Three Arrows and saying, hey, give us our money back. Like, you guys are going insolvent. We need our money back. And in which case they would have to either sell off their holdings in Ether, Polkadot, and Avalanche, or they would just they would give those holdings to their creditors, and then those creditors would then have the positions in Ether, Polkadot, and Avalanche. But you can rest assured that those creditors are more than likely to have a much higher resistance to crypto, to higher risk assets, and so that would mean that they're more likely to sell it off. So it doesn't look good. But if we also go to the paragraph above this, sources declined to share the names of those firms, so those creditors, on the record for fear of reprisal. But three people said the liquidation totaled at least $400 million. They added that the firm has manipulated limited contact with its counterparties since being liquidated. And we did get a tweet to that effect, and I believe this was the text of the tweet. We are in the process of communicating with relevant parties and fully committed to working this out. Tim, what does that phrase say to you when you hear something like that?
Especially in a world where a lot of people try to save face. First of all, respect to him to doing the right thing and not trying to sugarcoat what's going on. It is an admission of we have a problem. So this is not a good thing. It's not going to help the market. It's not going to help anyone, but at least he is being honest. He is trying to do what is best. And in my opinion, at least with that tweet, he's not trying to sugarcoat. I think that they're doing the best they can. No company wants to go insolvent like this. However, whereas other companies might try to put out some FOMO and try to put out some, hey, no, everything's fine. Don't worry about it. Everything behind the scenes is happy and great. He is not doing that. He is taking this situation very seriously, and so for that, I do applaud him. However, it doesn't make me feel better. It doesn't make any crypto holder feel better because this is an issue. And I'm going to talk about it here in just a second. I don't know if we have a little bit more. Do you have more to go into with that story?
Yeah, there's just one more.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it in a second. What will happen if the worst does happen with Three Arrows? It's not simple. It actually could it could start a chain of events that could take us very low in the crypto market.
Yeah, so that the final movement here is just kind of what was in the CEO co-founder was Su Zhu, and he's very much on the hook for all this. He's right in the middle of this hurricane that he's built for himself. But his main thesis that he got wrong that led to these liquidations was he was believing in a bull super cycle, and he was essentially holding on to that belief too long. And so while the rest of the market was believing that we were slipping into a bear cycle, he was refusing to believe that and thinking, that this was just part of a bull cycle. So that's kind of where it went wrong. But he has since come forward on Twitter and said that he no longer believes that, and he's regrettably wrong. And so that's going to be an unfortunate puzzle for him to try to figure out. And this doesn't look good for crypto, right? It doesn't look good for crypto. But at the end of the day, I did not get into Bitcoin. I did not get into Ethereum because of Three Arrows Capital and their analysts and their ability to predict and good new assets. I got into it because I've done the research on Bitcoin and Ethereum, and I believe that they're good investments. And at the end of the day, I believe still very strongly that I'm continuing to buy that they will emerge victorious through all this. They will not be. Their price is going to go through a bloodbath here, and it already is. But at the end of it, we're going to see a strong Ethereum and a strong Bitcoin, and it's going to be really, really sad to see the kind of the story that plays out, and all the dominoes that have to fall in order for us to shake out all of the, I wouldn't say crooks, but all of the over-leveraged individuals, all the irresponsibly over-leveraged and risking too much managers who are at the helm of these hedge funds, at the edge of these investment firms that are essentially telling investors that these are assets that aren't risky, or that they're still bullish, and the reality is that they're not, but they have to keep lying to them to be able to keep that narrative going. And to prove that point, if you come to my screen just one more time, we've got a tweet from Nexos, who's in the crypto space, and Nexos, this is just an example, right? That they're not the only one, not Nexo, who's distancing themselves. So this tweet says, Nexo has $0 exposure to Three Arrows Capital. Nexo has always differentiated itself from others as being a very conservative lender with stringent risk management and strict over-collateralization requirements, regardless of borrowers' reputation. So Nexo doing the right thing here, they're getting their money's worth out of their PR team and to say that they're trying to distance themselves from Three Arrows Capital, saying, we are not like them. We are not tied up with them. We have no debt with them, and they have no debt with us, right? So really, if you're a lender in the crypto space right now, that's kind of what you want to be doing is saying, hey, we are not in with Three Arrows Capital. We have not invested, we're not with them, and they're distancing themselves, and that's the right thing to do. If you're a lending company, you can't say that right now. That's not a good look, right? And you need to come out and say, hey, we do indeed have some stuff tied in with Three Arrows Capital, and this is what we're doing. This is our roadmap to resolving that for our investors. But Tim, yeah, that's kind of the long and short of what's going on here with these two crypto whales, so to speak. I mean, they're institutions working within crypto, but that's what's going on with them. Is they're on shaky grounds because they've been over leveraged, and in Celsius's case, they've been manipulating a slight variation in the terms and agreements that's different from other exchanges and other lending platforms, and things are going south mainly because they were over leveraged.
Yeah, before we jump into even more details of what is happening with Three Arrows and what is happening in the market as a whole, I think there's a point that you made there a second ago that I want to reiterate to people and kind of make sure people are attached to and they understand and they walk away with. Ethereum is not tied to what the people who have purchased its coins do with it. Ethereum is a use case. It has a use case. It is a project that is not defined by its price. Now, we all really like it when these coins like Ethereum and Cardano and AVAX and Chainlink and DOT, if we've invested in them, then we really like when the price of that coin is up. But here's the good news, is it doesn't change the fundamentals of who they are as a company. So whereas we might see the price drop down, there's actually times where, again, no one likes to see this if they were investing in the company, but where that price coming down and the weak hands and the bad investments getting out of the space are the best thing for a project, because when you remove weak hands, when you remove bad investments, it clears the path. And how Jebb has used this analogy before, it's that forest fire clearing the brush. It's painful, it burns, but it clears the brush of the trees, the thing that makes the forest so beautiful. It can actually thrive and grow and create more. So in the same breath, I want to make sure people understand, we're not saying that it feels good to see prices go down, but don't correlate Ethereum and the value, don't correlate the purpose and the the long-term success of Ethereum to short-term price. Don't do that to Cardano, to DOT, to anything. You should always be comparing the long-term objective of a company to its fundamentals as a project and its use case. And this is not a story saying that Ethereum does not have a good use case. This is a story of a company that invested in Ethereum is in deep trouble, and it could very negatively affect the price of Ethereum and the rest of the crypto space as well. But let's go ahead and transition with that thought, because we brought this story up. Why does this story matter? And I know a lot of people think, oh, it's because price is going to go down, but it's a little bit more. We had to dig in a little deeper. The reason this matters is because major organizations are going to go down, and they're going to look for, they don't want to be in an industry where this kind of stuff happens. And in fact, we've been sitting on the sideline waiting, saying, when is institutions going to get involved? Stories like this make institutions and other hedge funds similar to Three Arrows say, oh my gosh, is crypto the right place to be in right now? That is why it matters. I'm not saying that this is the nail in the coffin and we're not going to see, and we have to now wait another year or 2 or 3 or 4 before institutions want to touch crypto. But it is significant that when you see stories like this, it doesn't only affect the price, it affects the next investor coming into the space and their surety. So I got some questions, T-Shroom, I want you to answer, and we'll go back and forth with these. The first one: does Terra's collapse and the recent speculation around Celsius and Three Arrows hit institutional investors' confidence in the crypto space as a whole?
Yeah, Tim, it absolutely does. You know, when investors are looking for new things to get a return on investment in, they don't want to go into a sector, into a space where there's a lot of litigation going on, where there's a lot of attorneys getting hired at higher rates than employees, right? They want to go into a place and to invest their money where there is plenty, where there is a lot of positivity going on, and there's not a lot of companies, not a lot of operators looking at each other, saying, am I invested with you? We need to figure out if I can get my money back, So right now, this is not a good look for crypto. It's just not at all. And, it's part of what's playing the role in the descent of Bitcoin and Ethereum's price. And unfortunately, as the more details come out of not only Celsius and Three Arrows here, but also there's still details rolling out of Terra Luna's debacle, and it's looking like Do Kwon was doing a lot more nefarious things than folks realized, especially his close officers at Terraform Labs realized. As more and more of those details come out, it's going to scare off more and more institutional investors. But again, with that forest fire analogy, which somebody said was breathtaking in the chat, I can't agree more. It's breathtaking because it's true. This is a new industry, and right now, there's folks who've been operating and they've been getting away with it, but they've been operating over leveraged, and now that fire is taking them out. But those trees that are strong and they have firm roots, deep roots, and they have good access to sunlight, I'll just go ahead and indulge in this metaphor a little more. They're going to be the ones that are stalwart and definitions of success and models to be followed as the sector and the industry matures. And those, of course, are mainly Bitcoin, but also Ethereum and Cardano, and it looks like Avalanche and Tron and a bunch of other pretty decent projects out there are continuing to hold fast. They're not having downtime like Solana. They're not having a bunch of their CEOs coming out and saying that they're over leveraged or that they can't pay back, folks who've been staking on their platform. So, but right now institutional investors are absolutely scared of crypto and the average institutional investor. Now, there's other institutional investors who have done their due diligence on those strong trees on Bitcoin and Ethereum, and they're like, we don't really care about these counterparties like Celsius and Three Arrows. We understand that there's counterparties that are in every industry, and they can be bad actors. They can be over leveraged and have bad managers. That doesn't affect the fact that we've already determined we want to buy Bitcoin. We just are waiting to buy it really low.
Yeah.
So that's the answer.
Absolutely. Next question. Is all the potential insolvency catching the eye of regulators? And let me even kind of say that. What does regulation look like at this point for the crypto market?
Well, this is right in line with that forest fire analogy, right? Once the dust settles, right, and these somewhat meaning, giants of crypto, they're not really giants, but they've gone out and they've projected themselves as giants to investors to invest in them so that they can invest in these projects. Once the dust settles, the regulators absolutely are going to come in and they're going to say, okay, what exactly happened here? And what are some safeguards and some frameworks that the government can set up to make sure that this doesn't happen again?
Yeah.
And that may not be such a bad thing. Tim, what do you think about regulation at this point?
I think this is gonna spark that question. Well, we've been asking now for a while. The good news is Bitcoin holders. Gary Gensler has come out and said Bitcoin, he does not see Bitcoin as security. It's the other altcoins. You guys have heard Michael Saylor talk about this. He believes that literally, even Ethereum, every altcoin is a security, Bitcoin is not. I think there's some speculation that even Gary Gensler might be on the fence of saying, I don't know about Ethereum. I think Ethereum isn't. But this is going to add flames to that fire. And I think the ability for altcoins to get out of being a security just got a lot harder. You're going to have to prove yourself a lot more. So go XRP, continue to fight your battle over there with the SEC currently. It looks like they are going to win. It looks like they are on the road to victory, and that is going to be massive precedence for the rest of the altcoin space. But if we thought that it was going to be an easy road to get altcoins out of the SEC, that is not true, especially when you see things happen like what we just saw with Luna, what we saw with Celsius, what you are seeing with Three Arrows. The fear in the market, the fear that surrounds crypto investing is going to put a lot of pressure on the government and the SEC specifically to really fight hard to make altcoins look like securities and win that case so that they can regulate them. That's not what we want, but it is something we got to keep our eye on. So, as we start to kind of wrap this up, because we're getting closer to the end of the show, what is the application here? The application is there's a lot of stuff that is happening. I told you before, right now, we need to see some more stuff develop. We need to see some liquidations happen. There's a lot of support at 20,000, but if things like Three Arrows, if it keeps getting worse for Three Arrows, if they are not able to get a hold of it and we're crashed below 20,000, it's not just Three Arrows that's going to have massive liquidations. What's going to happen to other holders as well? One of the metrics that we weren't even able to talk about today, but guess what's happened recently, and we talked about this on the show a couple days ago, there's been a massive inflows on exchanges from miners. They do not want to sell. Trust me right now. Nobody that is a miner wants to sell right now, but they also don't want to get to a place where Bitcoin is sitting at about $13,000, $15,000. Ethereum is sitting at $700. And for them to sell then to be able to pay for all of their equipment and to continue to keep the lights on, that's an absolute terrible deal. So the reason their money's on the exchange is not because they want to sell, it's because they are afraid. And what I'm looking at right now, I think $20,000 is the key level. Yes, there's a lot of strength to that support line, but it's not very comforting support, because if that support breaks and if we go sub 20,000, there's a chance that floodgates open. And I'm not trying to spread FUD and saying we're going back down to $5,000. I think we're looking at that 18, 17, 15 is what to look at. And I also think it's going to take a couple of weeks before we see that happen. But we need to keep an eye on what happens fundamentally with things like Three Arrows, and to say if something new develops there and if it gets worse for them, if they're not grabbing a handle on what's happening with their hedge fund and with their clients, that could start a domino effect. And we didn't even talk about Michael Saylor and everything that's happening with him. What's going to happen to MicroStrategy if we go sub $20,000? There's a lot of things that are unknowns, but we do know if we get there, it could get pretty bad. But what is the application, though? Why are we talking about all of this? This could be a really rough summer. We're not going to lie to you. This could be a rough summer. But the beauty of when you get rid of the weak hands, when you go through these forest fires, they are not comfortable. They don't feel good. You are going to have every bit of you saying, should I just go ahead and bail? If you can grit through and hodl on and wait for the bull market to come, and I can't promise you it's coming this summer. I can't promise you it's coming this fall. I can't promise you it's coming in the next year. There's speculation. There's reasons to believe. There's hope on the horizon. But if you can just continue to hold on, the rewards you will get will be more than worth it. It just takes kind of having that philosophy, the same as the whales, that patience, that ability to be in the red, that thing, even though he's not a Bitcoin supporter, what Warren Buffett says when he says, when there's blood in the streets, you buy, even if it is your own. Right now, I think many of you out there, you are bleeding in the streets. And guess what the best thing to do is? If you can afford it, continue to DCA and continue to buy the bottoms, because it will be profitable long term. It's just not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy whatsoever. T-Shirt, I want to give your take on that real quick, because I know that is very easy to say. It is very hard to follow.
Yeah, I'll give my take, and then we'll slip into some super chats as we kind of wrap up here. But I'm continuing to hodl, and I'm anticipating the bottom here. I can't wait till we stop, kind of reporting on the bleeding and the continuing the bleeding, and start predicting the bottom, and start, in a couple of weeks here, hopefully we'll be, kind of cherry picking which analysts are best at picking the bottom, and kind of listening to what they have to say and where they're kind of thinking the bottom's at. But right now, we don't really have a reason as as bearish narratives continue to kind of dominate the landscape and at an accelerating rate, unfortunately, we don't have any reason to try and predict the bottoms yet. So that's kind of my take, and ultimately the application, the takeaway there is, bear it. This is the industry you're in. This is the industry I'm in, and I love to be in it. It's painful sometimes to see it. It's painful sometimes when your friends who aren't super into crypto come up and say, "Hey, what's happening in the crypto markets, man? You down a lot?" It's painful to have those conversations, right? But it's humbling. It's good. It's good for you to go through this and grow at the other side. Selling is definitely not an option I'm looking into right now. Again, you'd have to see something structurally break down with Bitcoin in order for me to sell. There have to be like some downtime or some lapses or something going on, like a giant reduction in nodes, something like that. That's the type of things I'm looking at for sell pressure right now. This is just business as usual in a new industry, in a newest sector. So we'll go into those super chats. AJ asked a question, I think, pretty directly to me, and donated $5. Why would you join the army and work for the same government that's screwing us? Well, it's a decent question, although I don't think it's coming from a place of sincerity. But I actually don't work specifically for the federal government. I work for the state government of Florida, but I also do have a dual mandate to work for the federal government too, if need be. It's like I want to be the change that I see in the world. I want to be so that's kind of how I would respond to that. And I don't think the government is screwing us. I think that certain people have made poor decisions, but the U.S. government has generally led to prosperity. That may be a very controversial issue for some people,
it's
but
the whole issue. At the end of the day, the freedoms that anyone has enjoyed up to this point to even have the right to go against the government like that and stay out of prison are because people like T. Shroom have volunteered and said, even if I don't agree with the whole system, I'm going to sacrifice my time, my resources, and I'm going to be willing to put my life on the line so that we can continue to fight for freedom even when we disagree with the government. I think that's the best answer to that question.
Yeah, and I'm anti-big government, but I'm definitely not anti-government. I think that the government, especially the U.S. government, does generally good things for the world. Okay, so moving on to Matt C., member for 10 months, Jebb Grandmaster said, just wanted to wish Jebb well and thank this amazing team for the great job they are doing every day. Thank you so much, Matt C.
Yeah, I saw in chat a lot. People must not have gotten the intro, and I should have said something in the middle of the show about it. Just so you guys know, Jebb is out sick, and it's been very frustrating. And I know you guys are frustrated. As a company, it can be frustrating, but we're trying to pick up our bounds on how to work and do things. That's the great team we've built here. We did it so that when Jebb started the channel, it was all him. And he was sick. If he was out, no videos. Now we have a team. Even when he's out and he has to do things, we are here. We can continue to bring you guys everything you need. But trust me, the most frustrated person about this entire situation is Jebb, because he's been sick several times this year. And what we're starting to suspect, he's going to see a doctor about it, that something throughout the pandemic, something throughout, we don't know what is happening, but his immune system is so compromised. We're not talking about he just has some sniffles and decides not to come in. We're talking he gets seriously sick, and it's happening frequently. So please be praying for him. Hopefully we have more answers on that soon. Again, no reason to think it's life-threatening at this point. It's just very, very frustrating, and hopefully that gets all settled. He should be back in soon, but that'll be a day-to-day thing, and we'll keep you guys posted on what's happening there. Last thing I'm going to say before I go, there's an episode tonight. If you guys are on Debate Crypto, if you guys watch that channel, go check it out. I'm going to be on the show tonight at 7:30, and I'm going to be joined by a couple other technical analysts. They do technical analysis Thursdays, but I'm going to be on there with Frankie Candles, CVO, and Gareth Soloway. Super excited. Again, 7:30 tonight over on Debate Crypto. You don't want to miss it. Come check it out. That is all I have for you guys in this video. I hope you guys have a great day. Again, continue to stay up to date on the markets. Continue to educate yourself so that you can make your decisions for yourself and you don't have to just blindly follow other investors. That is what we're all about here. Create your financial sovereignty. Love you guys. We will see you guys in a video this afternoon and then again on the show tomorrow. With that being said, though, peace.
Oh, I got a real good feeling.